The rain drummed steadily against the windows of Mel's diner, creating rivulets that distorted the neon signs across the street. Sarah Martinez wiped down the counter for the third time in 10 minutes, her mind racing through the stack of bills waiting at home. The lunch rush had been slower than usual, and every empty table meant less tips in her apron pocket. "Another coffee, hun?" she asked the elderly man at the corner booth, forcing her practiced smile despite the knot of worry in her stomach. Her landlord's voicemail from that morning echoed in her mind. Rent was 3 days late, and his patience was wearing thin. The bell above the door chimed, and Sarah looked up to see a man in an expensive charcoal suit stepping inside, shaking raindrops from his hair. He looked completely out of place in the worn vinyl booths and checkered linoleum of Mel's diner. His clothes probably cost more than she made in a month, Sarah thought, but there was something unsettled in his expression that caught her attention. He stood near the entrance, seemingly lost, checking his phone with increasing frustration. Sarah watched as he ran his hand through his dark hair, his shoulders tense with what looked like more than just being caught in the rain. "Excuse me," he approached the counter hesitantly. "I'm terribly sorry to bother you, but I seem to be completely turned around. I'm looking for Pioneer Courthouse Square, and my GPS just died." His voice carried a slight East Coast accent, refined but not condescending. Sarah noticed the genuine politeness in his tone, not the demanding attitude she often encountered from well-dressed customers who wandered in from the business district. "Oh, you're not too far," Sarah said, setting down her cleaning rag. "Head north on 3rd Street for about 6 blocks. You'll see the red brick building, that's the courthouse. The square is right across from it. Can't miss it." "North on 3rd, he repeated, pulling out a small notebook to jot it down. "Thank you so much. I'm not from around here, obviously." "Tourist?" Sarah asked, genuinely curious. Something about him seemed different from the typical visitors who stumbled into their neighborhood. "Something like that," he said with a slight smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'm taking some time to see different places. Get a feel for how people really live." There was an odd weight to his words that Sarah couldn't quite interpret. She glanced at the expensive watch on his wrist, then back to his face, noting the subtle signs of stress around his eyes. "Well, Portland's a good city for that. Real people, real problems, real community," she said, then immediately felt self-conscious about her honesty. "I mean..." "No, that's exactly what I'm looking for," he said quickly. "Real." The word hung between them for a moment. Sarah found herself studying his face more carefully. Despite the expensive clothes, there was something almost vulnerable about him, as if he was searching for something he couldn't quite name. "You want some coffee while you're here?" she offered. "On the house. You look like you could use it." He seemed surprised by the gesture. "That's very kind of you, but I couldn't." "It's just coffee," Sarah said with a shrug, already reaching for the pot. "Besides, it's miserable out there. Give the rain a few minutes to let up." He hesitated, then slid onto one of the counter stools. "Thank you. That's very generous." Sarah poured the coffee into one of their better mugs, not the chipped ones she usually used for walk-ins. "I'm Sarah, by the way." "Michael," he said, wrapping his hands around the warm cup. "This is excellent coffee. Mel gets it from a local roaster. Says chain coffee tastes like dishwater." Sarah found herself relaxing slightly. There was something genuine about Michael's appreciation that seemed to go beyond politeness. "Mel's the owner." "Was. His daughter runs it now, but she kept the name. Jenny's good people, lets me pick up extra shifts when I need them." Sarah caught herself sharing more than she usually did with strangers, but something about Michael's attentive listening made her feel heard. "You've been working here long?" 3 years. "It's good work, honest work. Pays the bills, mostly." The last word slipped out before she could stop it, and she felt heat rise in her cheeks. Michael noticed her slight embarrassment. "I imagine it's challenging work. People can be difficult." "Some can. But most folks are just trying to get through their day, you know? They need their coffee, their moment of normalcy. I try to give them that." Michael studied her face as she spoke, and Sarah felt an unexpected connection in that moment, as if he truly understood what she was saying. "That's a beautiful way to look at it," he said quietly. The sincerity in his voice surprised her. Sarah was used to customers making small talk, but this felt different. More real, as he had put it. "What about you?" she asked. "What do you do?" Michael's expression shifted, becoming more guarded. "I'm between things right now, trying to figure out what comes next." "That can be scary," Sarah said, recognizing the uncertainty in his voice. "But sometimes not knowing is the first step to finding something better." "Is that experience talking?" Sarah laughed softly. "Oh, definitely. I've had my share of not knowing. Single mom, moved here from California when my daughter was 2. Didn't know anybody, didn't have much of a plan. But somehow we made it work." "You have a daughter?" "Emma. She's 8 now. Smartest kid you'd ever meet, and twice as stubborn as me." Sarah's face lit up as she talked about her daughter. "She wants to be a marine biologist. Says she's going to save the whales." "That's wonderful. She sounds remarkable." "She is." Sarah's expression grew more serious. "I just want to give her better opportunities than I had, you know? Make sure she doesn't have to worry about, well, the things I worry about." Michael nodded slowly, and Sarah caught something in his expression, understanding, but also something that looked almost like guilt. The rain had lightened to a gentle patter against the windows. Michael glanced outside, then back at Sarah. "I should probably head out," he said, reaching for his wallet. "Thank you for the coffee and the directions. And the conversation." "Don't worry about it," Sarah said, waving away his money. "Just a cup of coffee." "It was more than that," Michael said seriously. "Thank you, Sarah. Really." As he stood to leave, Sarah found herself wishing the conversation could continue. There had been something refreshing about talking to someone who seemed to really listen, who didn't make her feel judged for her circumstances. "Michael," she called as he reached the door. "If you're still exploring the city, Mel's makes the best apple pie in Portland. We're open until 9. He smiled, and this time it did reach his eyes. "I'll remember that." After he left, Sarah found herself watching through the window as he walked down the street, his figure becoming smaller in the gray afternoon light. There had been something about their conversation that lingered with her, a sense of connection she hadn't felt in a long time. She didn't know that 2 blocks away, Michael Richardson sat in his car, staring at the business card his father's assistant had given him that morning. The card bore the address of Richardson Technologies' new Portland branch, where he was supposed to report tomorrow to begin his real-world education as the company's heir apparent. He looked back toward Mel's diner, thinking about Sarah's kindness, her strength, and the genuine warmth she had shown a complete stranger. For the first time in months, he felt like he had encountered something authentic, something his privileged world had never offered him. Michael pulled out his phone and dialed his father's assistant. "This is Michael Richardson. I need you to cancel tomorrow's meeting. I'm extending my stay in Portland." As he hung up, he realized he was already looking forward to that apple pie. 3 days later, Sarah was cleaning tables during the afternoon lull when she heard the familiar chime of the door. She looked up to see Michael walking in, looking more relaxed than he had during their first encounter. He'd traded his expensive suit for dark jeans and a simple button-down shirt, though Sarah could tell the clothes were still high quality. "You came back for that pie," she said, unable to suppress a smile. "Among other things," Michael replied, taking a seat at the counter. "How's Emma doing with her marine biology studies?" Sarah felt a warm flutter of surprise that he remembered. "She's currently trying to convince me that we need to visit the Oregon Coast Aquarium this weekend. Apparently, there's a new jellyfish exhibit that's crucial to her education." Sounds like a reasonable request from a future scientist. Reasonable, maybe, but not exactly in the budget right now. The words slipped out before Sarah could stop them, and she immediately felt that familiar heat of embarrassment. "Sorry, I didn't mean to." "Don't apologize," Michael said gently. "I asked about Emma because I was genuinely interested. You clearly love her very much." Sarah poured his coffee without being asked, noticing how he seemed more at ease today. "What about you? Any family?" Michael's expression grew complicated. "It's complex. My father and I have different ideas about what my life should look like." "That's hard. What does he want for you?" "He wants me to take over the family business. Follow in his footsteps, carry on the legacy." Michael stared into his coffee cup. Problem is, I'm not sure it's what I want. What do you want? The question seemed to catch him off guard. Sarah realized it might have been a while since someone had asked him that. I want to matter, he said finally. I want to do something that actually helps people, not just accumulates more wealth. Sarah studied his face, noting the genuine frustration there. What kind of business is it? Technology. Software development, mostly. It's successful, profitable, but I keep thinking there has to be more to life than profit margins and board meetings. Maybe there's a way to do both? Use the business to help people. Maybe, Michael said, but his tone suggested he'd had this internal debate many times. What about you? Was waitressing always the plan? Sarah laughed. Definitely not. I actually started college studying social work. Wanted to help families, kids in difficult situations. She gestured around the diner. Life had other plans. What happened? Emma happened. And that's not a complaint. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. But her father decided he wasn't ready for the responsibility, and I had to make some hard choices. Dropped out of school, found work that would pay the bills and let me be there for her. Do you ever think about going back? To school, I mean. Sarah's laugh was tinged with sadness. Every day. But between rent, childcare, groceries, dreams are expensive. Michael was quiet for a long moment, and Sarah worried she'd shared too much. She was about to change the subject when he spoke. What if someone wanted to help? Hypothetically. Help how? Financially. With school, or just life in general? Sarah stiffened slightly. I'm not looking for charity, Michael. I didn't mean it as charity. I meant it as investment. In someone who deserves better opportunities. You barely know me. I know you gave a stranger directions and free coffee on a day when you were clearly worried about money. I know you light up when you talk about your daughter's dreams. I know you see the best in people and you work hard for everything you have. Michael met her eyes. That tells me more about your character than most people reveal in years. Sarah felt her defenses wavering, but years of struggling alone had taught her to be cautious. Why would you want to help someone you just met? Michael hesitated, and Sarah could see him wrestling with something. Because I've spent my whole life surrounded by people who only care about what I can do for them. You helped me without wanting anything in return. That's rare. Michael, I appreciate the thought, but I can't accept money from someone I barely know. It wouldn't be right. What if we got to know each other better? The question hung in the air between them. Sarah felt her heart skip slightly at the implication. What are you suggesting? Dinner. Tomorrow night. Somewhere nice, but not intimidating. We talk, we learn about each other, and maybe we figure out how someone with resources can help someone with dreams. Sarah studied his face, looking for any sign of ulterior motives. All she saw was genuine interest and something that looked like hope. I'd have to find a babysitter for Emma. Bring her along. I'd love to meet the future marine biologist. The offer surprised Sarah. In her limited dating experience, men usually saw Emma as a complication to be worked around, not someone they wanted to include. She's pretty protective of me, and she asks a lot of questions. I'd be disappointed if she didn't. Smart kids should be curious. Sarah found herself considering the offer more seriously. There was something about Michael that felt different, not just his obvious wealth, but his genuine interest in her life, his respectful approach to helping. Where were you thinking? There's a place called the Pearl Room. It's nice, but family-friendly. They have a kids menu, and I hear their desserts are exceptional. Sarah knew the Pearl Room by reputation. It was definitely outside her usual price range, but not so fancy that she'd feel completely out of place. Michael, I need to be honest about something. Of course. I don't have many nice clothes. If this place is as upscale as I think it is, you'll look beautiful in whatever you wear, he said simply. But if you're concerned, we can go somewhere more casual. This isn't about impressing anyone, it's about spending time together. Sarah felt her resolve crumbling. It had been so long since someone had shown genuine interest in her as a person, not just as a server or a single mom struggling to get by. "Okay," she said finally. "Tomorrow night. But I pay for Emma's meal." "Absolutely not. Michael." "Sarah, please. Let me do this. It would make me happy." Something in his tone stopped her protests. She realized that for whatever reason, this mattered to him in a way that went beyond simple generosity. "Okay. Tomorrow night." Michael's smile was radiant. "Should I pick you up?" "We'll meet you there. 7 o'clock. "Perfect." As Michael left the diner, Sarah found herself both excited and terrified. She hadn't been on anything resembling a date in over 2 years, and never with someone like Michael. She didn't know what he did for a living beyond technology, didn't know his last name, didn't know why someone who could clearly afford to eat anywhere would choose to spend his evenings at Mel's diner. But she knew he listened when she talked, remembered details about her daughter, and offered help without making her feel small or desperate. For now, that felt like enough. That evening, as Sarah helped Emma with her homework at their small kitchen table, her daughter looked up from her math problems. "Mom, you seem different today." "Happy different." "Do I?" "Yeah. Like when you got that extra shift last month and we could order pizza." Sarah laughed. "I met someone today. Someone nice." "A boy?" Emma's eyes widened with 8-year-old curiosity. "A man. And he wants to meet you." "Why?" "Because I told him about my smart, wonderful daughter who wants to save the whales." Emma considered this seriously. "Is he going to be your boyfriend?" "I don't know, sweetheart. We're just going to have dinner tomorrow and see if we like spending time together." "Can I come?" "He specifically asked me to bring you." Emma's expression shifted to cautious approval. "Okay. But if he's mean to you, I'm telling him to leave." Sarah pulled her daughter into a hug, marveling at the fierce protectiveness in such a small person. "Deal." "But I think he's one of the good ones." As she tucked Emma into bed that night, Sarah allowed herself to feel hopeful for the first time in months. Maybe things were finally looking up. Meanwhile, across town in his hotel suite, Michael stared at his laptop screen, cursor blinking in an empty email to his father. He'd been trying to write an explanation for why he was delaying his return to Boston for 3 hours, but every attempt felt inadequate. How could he explain that a waitress at a neighborhood diner had made him feel more human in 2 conversations than years of board meetings and social obligations? How could he tell his father that he was considering walking away from everything they'd built together because he'd glimpsed what authentic connection looked like? Michael closed the laptop without sending anything. Tomorrow night would either confirm what he was beginning to suspect, that Sarah represented something real and valuable in his carefully constructed world, or it would remind him why he'd spent his life surrounded by people who understood the rules of his social class. Either way, he knew there was no going back to the life he'd been living before he walked into Mel's diner. The Pearl Room was exactly as elegant as Sarah had imagined, with warm lighting and white tablecloths, but Michael had been right about the welcoming atmosphere. Emma sat between them, initially shy but quickly warming up as Michael asked her detailed questions about marine life that demonstrated he'd actually researched her interests. "Did you know that jellyfish don't have brains?" Emma explained earnestly, cutting her chicken tender with the focused concentration of a surgeon. "But they can still navigate and hunt. Mom says that proves you don't always need to overthink everything." Michael glanced at Sarah with amusement. "Your mom sounds very wise." "She is. She works really hard, and she never complains, even when she's tired or sad about money." "Emma," Sarah said gently, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. "It's okay, Mom. Michael seems nice. And he's not asking you weird questions like that guy from your work who wanted to know if you were financially stable enough for a relationship." Michael's expression darkened slightly. "Someone actually asked you that?" "It wasn't that bad," Sarah said quickly, shooting Emma a look that clearly said, "Enough sharing." "It was pretty bad," Emma continued, undeterred. "Mom cried after he left. I heard her in the kitchen." An uncomfortable silence settled over the table. Sarah wished she could disappear, but Michael's voice was gentle when he spoke. "I'm sorry someone made you feel that way. That was thoughtless and cruel." The sincerity in his tone caught Sarah off guard. She'd expected judgment or pity, but instead found understanding. "It's fine. Dating as a single parent is complicated. I imagine it is. People make assumptions. What about you? Emma asked Michael directly. Do you have kids? I don't. I've never been married. Why not? Emma, Sarah warned, but Michael smiled. It's a fair question. I guess I never found the right person. Someone who saw me for who I really am, not just what I have. Something in his phrasing made Sarah look at him more carefully. There had been several moments during their conversations when she'd sensed he was holding something back, choosing his words carefully. What do you have? Emma asked. Michael glanced at Sarah, and she could see him wrestling with how to answer. I have a comfortable life. Maybe too comfortable. Sometimes that makes it hard to know if people like you for the right reasons. Mom likes you, Emma announced matter-of-factly. She's been humming while she cleans, which she only does when she's happy. Emma. Sarah's face was burning now. It's true. And you keep checking your phone to see if he texted. Michael was grinning openly now. I like your mom too, Emma. She's pretty special. Are you going to help her go back to school? The question caught both adults off guard. Sarah stared at her daughter in horror. Emma, what are you talking about? I heard you on the phone with Aunt Lisa yesterday. You said someone offered to help with school, but you didn't know if it was okay to accept help from someone you barely knew. Sarah closed her eyes, wishing the floor would open up and swallow her. Emma, that was a private conversation. But Michael's right here. Why don't you just ask him? Michael was quiet for a moment, then leaned forward slightly. Sarah, is that something you've been thinking about? It's not. I mean, you mentioned it, but I didn't want to assume. Sarah fumbled for words, feeling exposed and embarrassed. What if I told you I was serious about wanting to help? I'd ask why. Nobody does something like that without wanting something in return. Michael was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. When he looked up, his expression was more serious than Sarah had seen before. Can I tell you both something? Something I probably should have mentioned earlier. Sarah felt a flutter of anxiety. Okay. My full name is Michael Richardson. My father owns Richardson Technologies. The name hit Sarah like a physical blow. Richardson Technologies was huge. Their software was used by businesses across the country. She'd seen their logo on computers, read about them in business magazines at the doctor's office. Oh my God, she whispered. I know it's a lot. I wasn't trying to deceive you, I wanted to meet people who didn't know who I was. Who would talk to me like a normal person. Emma looked confused. Is that bad? It's not bad, sweetheart, Sarah managed. It's just... Michael's family is very wealthy. Very important. So he can definitely help you with school then, Emma said pragmatically. Despite everything, Sarah almost smiled at her daughter's logic. But the revelation had shifted something fundamental in her understanding of their interactions. Why didn't you tell me? She asked Michael. Because of how you're looking at me right now. Like I'm suddenly different. Sarah realized he was right. She was seeing him differently, not as the thoughtful man who'd listened to her dreams, but as an incredibly wealthy stranger whose motives she couldn't understand. You are different. This changes everything. Does it? I'm the same person who's been talking to you for the past few days. The same person who thinks you're remarkable and deserves better opportunities. But why me? You could help anyone. You could start a foundation, donate to charities. I do donate to charities. But that's not personal. That's just writing checks. Michael's voice grew more intense. Sarah, in my world, every relationship is transactional. People want something from me, business deals, social connections, access to wealth. You're the first person in years who helped me without knowing who I was or what I could do for you. But now I do know. And now you're pulling away. Sarah looked at Emma, who was watching the exchange with the astute attention of a child who understood more than adults usually gave her credit for. Can we finish dinner? Emma asked quietly. The grown-ups can figure out their feelings later. The simple request broke some of the tension. Sarah and Michael both managed small smiles, and they spent the rest of the meal talking about safer topics. Emma's school, the marine biology program at Oregon State University, Michael's travels around the country. But Sarah could feel the weight of the revelation between them, changing the dynamic of every interaction. After dinner, Michael walked them to Sarah's car in the parking lot. Emma ran ahead to peer into the windows of other cars, leaving the adults a moment of privacy. "I'm sorry," Michael said. "I should have told you sooner. I understand why you didn't. I need time to process this. I meant what I said about helping with school. Not because I'm wealthy and you're not, but because I believe in you. Because I think you could make a real difference as a social worker." Sarah felt tears threatening. "Michael, I appreciate that, but accepting that kind of help from you, it would change everything between us. I'd always wonder if you were helping me out of pity, or if I owed you something, or..." "You don't owe me anything. And it's not pity. Then what is it?" Michael was quiet for a long moment. "It's hope. Hope that there are still good people in the world who help strangers give directions. Hope that kindness isn't extinct. Hope that maybe I can be part of something meaningful instead of just accumulating wealth. So I'd be your charity project. You'd be my friend who happens to have dreams that I'm in a position to help with." Emma ran back to them, slightly out of breath. "Mom, can Michael come see our apartment?" "Emma, that's not..." "I'd love to," Michael said. "If that's okay with you." Sarah hesitated. Inviting him to their modest apartment felt like crossing another line, making their different worlds even more obvious. But something in his expression, genuine interest, not curiosity about how the other half lived, made her reconsider. "It's small," she warned. "I don't care about that." 20 minutes later, Michael sat at their small kitchen table while Emma showed him her collection of marine biology books and drawings. Sarah watched from the doorway, seeing her home through his eyes, the cramped but clean space, the carefully maintained furniture from thrift stores, the drawings and school papers covering the refrigerator. "This is beautiful," he said, looking at one of Emma's drawings of a whale. "That's a blue whale. They can grow to be 100 feet long and weigh 200 tons, but they eat tiny shrimp called krill. Incredible. Do you want to see them in person someday?" "More than anything. Mom says maybe we can go whale watching when I'm older and we have more money." Michael glanced at Sarah, who was leaning against the kitchen counter, arms crossed defensively. "What if we all went whale watching next weekend?" "Michael," Sarah said firmly. "As friends. Nothing more complicated than that." Emma looked between the two adults, sensing the undercurrent of tension she didn't fully understand. "I'm going to brush my teeth," she announced, and disappeared down the short hallway. "You can't keep doing this," Sarah said when they were alone. "Doing what?" "Offering to solve our problems with money. It's not that simple." "Why isn't it?" "Because it makes me feel like a charity case. Because I don't know what you expect in return. Because my daughter is getting attached to someone who's going to leave eventually." Michael stood up from the table. "What makes you think I'm leaving? People like you don't stay in places like this, Michael. You'll go back to your real life, your board meetings and business deals, and will just be a nice memory of the time you played at being normal." "That's not fair. Isn't it? How long are you planning to stay in Portland? Really?" Michael didn't answer immediately, and Sarah knew she'd hit the truth. "I don't know," he said finally. "Exactly. So don't make promises you can't keep. Especially not to an 8-year-old who's already planning our whale-watching trip." Emma reappeared in her pajamas, interrupting the tense moment. "Michael, are you going to be Mom's boyfriend?" "Emma, that's not appropriate," Sarah started. "I'd like to be," Michael said quietly, looking directly at Sarah. "If she'll let me." The honesty in his voice caught Sarah off guard. She'd expected some deflection, some careful non-answer that adults usually gave to children's direct questions. "But I live in Boston," he continued, "and I have responsibilities there. So I don't know how to make that work." "Maybe you could move here," Emma suggested. "Portland's nice. And Mom makes really good pancakes on Sundays." Despite everything, Sarah smiled. "It's more complicated than that, sweetheart. Grown-up stuff is always complicated, Emma said with the resignation of someone who'd observed this phenomenon many times. "But maybe you could try figuring it out together instead of separately." After Michael left that night, Sarah sat on her small couch, staring at the business card he'd given her. Richardson Technologies, with his direct number written on the back. She'd Googled the company while Emma got ready for bed. The numbers were staggering: annual revenues in the billions, offices in major cities worldwide. Michael's father consistently ranked among the most powerful tech executives in the country. And Michael was the heir to all of it, sitting in her kitchen, asking if he could take them whale watching. Her phone buzzed with a text message. "Thank you for dinner tonight. Emma is wonderful, and so are you. I know the revelation about my family complicates things, but I hope you'll give us a chance to figure it out. Michael." Sarah stared at the message for a long time before responding. "I need time to think. This is bigger than just the two of us now." His response came quickly. "I understand. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere until we talk this through." But that was exactly the problem, Sarah thought. Eventually, he would have to go somewhere. The question was whether she was brave enough to see where this could lead, knowing it might end with her heart broken and Emma disappointed. For the first time in years, Sarah had met someone who saw her potential, who wanted to help her build a better life. The fact that he had the resources to actually make that happen should have felt like a blessing. Instead, it felt like the most complicated problem she'd ever faced. As she turned off the lights and headed to bed, Sarah caught sight of Emma's whale drawing still on the kitchen table where Michael had been admiring it. Tomorrow, she would have to figure out how to explain to her daughter that fairy tales were more complicated in real life. But tonight, she allowed herself to imagine what it might be like to have someone in her corner who believed in her dreams as much as she believed in Emma's. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. 6 months later, Sarah stood at the podium in the Richardson Technologies Portland headquarters, looking out at the crowd of social workers, community leaders, and local officials gathered for the launch announcement of the Richardson Community Partnership Foundation. "When I first met Michael Richardson," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves, "I had no idea who he was. I just saw someone who looked lost and needed directions." She found Michael's face in the audience, seated in the front row next to Emma, who was wearing her best dress and holding a small bouquet of flowers they'd brought for the occasion. "What I've learned over the past 6 months is that sometimes the best directions we can give someone aren't about finding their way geographically, they're about finding their way to something meaningful." Sarah had quit her job at Mel's Diner 3 months earlier to become the foundation's first program director, overseeing educational scholarships for single parents and community development initiatives throughout Portland. Michael had stayed in the city, opening Richardson Technologies' new West Coast Community Outreach Division and learning to make what Emma declared were acceptable pancakes during their Sunday morning tradition. "The Richardson Community Partnership Foundation isn't about charity," Sarah continued. "It's about recognizing that everyone deserves the chance to pursue their dreams, regardless of their circumstances. It's about building bridges between those who have resources and those who have determination." After the official presentations and networking, Sarah found herself on the building's rooftop garden with Michael and Emma, watching the sunset paint the Portland skyline in shades of gold and pink. "So," Michael said, taking her hand, "how does it feel to be changing the world?" "Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be," Sarah replied. Emma, who had been examining the rooftop herb garden with scientific intensity, looked up at them. "Does this mean we can finally go whale watching?" Sarah and Michael exchanged a look and started laughing. "Yes," Michael said, pulling 2 tickets from his jacket pocket. "Next weekend. I thought we could make it official, our first family adventure." The word family hung in the air between them, full of promise and possibility. Sarah felt her heart skip the way it had that first day in the diner, when a lost stranger had asked for directions and somehow found his way to her heart. "I love you," Michael said quietly, the words carrying the weight of everything they'd built together over the past months. "I love you too," Sarah replied, meaning it completely. Emma looked up at both of them with the satisfied expression of someone whose 8-year-old matchmaking instincts had proven correct. "Good," she said pragmatically. "Now can we go get ice cream? All this grown-up romantic stuff makes me hungry." As they headed back inside, Sarah reflected on how a simple act of kindness, giving directions to a stranger, had led to this moment. She'd learned that sometimes the best directions weren't about finding a specific place, but about finding the courage to explore an unexpected path. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, That path led you exactly where you belonged.